Alright, welcome back to the show today. We're talking about the NBA CBA. CBA stands for Collective Bargaining Agreement. CBAs exist anywhere where there are laborers and employers. It's just a list of demands from a group of employees that are a part of a certain skill set or field for their employer. The NBA CBA is between the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association, and the NBA, or more specifically, the NBA team owners. So let's get into what the NBA players are entitled to. They're entitled to 50% of the BRI. Well, what's the BRI? BRI stands for basketball related income. Basically, this covers any sort of revenue that's even tangentially related to the NBA. We're talking ticket sales, TV deals, merchandise, and even the fines that the players, the coaches, and the owners receive. Which is kind of funny to think that a penalty or a fine that you pay ultimately results in revenue for your business. So the first new addition to the CBA is that the NBA's licensing will now count toward the BRI. That's $160 million in projected revenue. I assume this means the actual licensing of the name NBA and the logo. Maybe the owners are selling t-shirts with the NBA logo on it and making $160 million a year. I don't really know, and honestly, I don't really care. But what I do care about is that it's going to ultimately raise the salary cap $2 million a year. Nice job, CJ McCollum. McCollum is the president of the Players Association. Even though $2 million is really just a minimum contract for a player for 1 year, it's still a win for the players. So does this mean if the BRI goes up, the salary cap goes up? Yes, it does. The salary cap is actually how the players and the owners split the money. The salary cap is around 43% of the BRI. Wait a minute, I thought they were splitting this thing 50-50. What's this 43% nonsense? Well, that factors in that basically every NBA team owner goes over the salary cap. So if you really think about it, the owners are actually spending significantly more than 50%. In some cases, we're talking like 65%. I mean, the Warriors are $90 million over the cap, which makes you think that there probably are some revenue streams that aren't a part of the BRI. Otherwise, owning a basketball team might not even be profitable when you look at the bottom line. So in theory, the owners could all come together and say, hey, let's not go over the salary cap. In fact, let's not even come close to going over the salary cap. That way we get to keep most of the basketball income. The players can get They can't do that because according to the CBA, the teams have to spend 90% of the salary cap. If you want to own an NBA team, you can't be cheap. Also, most billionaires buy an NBA team as a vanity project. It's a way to swing their financial They're gonna spend money. This brings us to the next new part of the CBA, cap smoothing. Even if you weren't an NBA fan in 2016, I'm sure you've heard of the great cap spike. Thanks to a new TV deal that was worth a lot of money, the basketball related income shot up a lot, meaning that the salary cap shot up a lot, meaning that teams had to fill up that 90% at least of the salary cap, meaning the free agents that year were in for a lot of money. Chandler Parsons, Timothy Mozgov, Luol Deng, all these guys signed giant contracts. I mean, it was only 7 years ago, and some of you guys probably haven't even heard some of those names. Believe it or not, Mike Conley was actually the highest paid player in the NBA for a while. Everyone loves Mike Conley though, so no one uses him as an example. I should also bring up the Warriors to use this influx of cap space to sign Kevin Durant. Now you can't comment and tell me I forgot. To avoid this giant spike in players that aren't so good not being paid tons of money, they've decided to smooth this spike by only allowing the cap to rise 10% every year. But wait a minute, that's not fair. Where does the rest of this money go? Relax, it gets spread out through the next couple years. So the CBA is not only a negotiation between the players and the owners, it's also a negotiation between the owners and the owners and the players and the players. For instance, think about the luxury tax. If you own an NBA team and you have less money than the other owners and the other owners want to be able to go over the salary cap, you're gonna say, absolutely not. I don't have the means to do that and you do. That's not fair. And the rich owner says, well, what if we got taxed extra and we gave that extra tax money to you? You as the broke ass NBA team owner that you are gonna say, it's a pretty good idea. This is in the NBA CBA. All that luxury tax money gets spread out through the teams that were good and stayed below the tax line. When it comes to NBA ownership, there's a huge disparity in wealth. Steve Ballmer is worth $100 billion. Peter Holt, the majority owner of the Spurs, is worth $100 million. At least that's what I read on the internet. Now let's get into a new article of the CBA that was probably negotiated amongst the players. For a player to be on an all-NBA team or be the league MVP, he needs to play at least 65 games out of 82. Who cares who wins what award? Why does it matter? Isn't that a little vain? It does matter because if you win one of these awards, you become eligible for Supermax money. I'm sure a lot of NBA players were a little bit salty that guys were on the all-NBA teams that didn't even play 60 games. For instance, Giannis, Curry, Lillard, Braun, Butler, they all wouldn't have been eligible for all-NBA teams this year, and they all made the all-NBA teams. I like this rule because I think all NBA and MVP should be a recognition for your performance that season, not what you've done in the past. Another part of the CBA that was up for debate was letting high schoolers come straight into the NBA again. A lot of people thought they were going to get rid of the rule, but they didn't. It's still here. Personally, I think this is something that the players would have fought for. Obviously, players that are already in the league aren't going to be in favor of increasing the pool of players that could take their roster spot. That's my guess. Now let's get into the change of the salary cap structure. Now lock in, this is the most difficult part to understand, but you're smart, I think you'll get it. I'm sure you've all heard about the new second apron, but for context, let's talk about the 4 different payroll lines. The first is the salary cap, the amount of money you can spend without using exceptions. This year, that's $136 million. The second is the tax line. That's when you actually begin paying luxury tax. That's set at $165 million. Then we have the first apron. Apron just means line or level. It's a weird choice of words. I don't know why they use it. The first apron is set at $172 million this year. This rule means you cannot acquire a player in a sign-in trade that puts you over $172 million. And if you're making a trade, you have to match salaries almost exactly. You can only take back 10% of the outgoing player's salary. You also can't sign a player that had been waived from another team earlier that season if that player was making over $12.2 million. This means you can't pick up buyout guys. So if that were in place last year, Russ could not have signed with the Clippers because he was making $46 million. And technically he was waived by the Jazz. Now let's talk about the new second apron. The only teams that really have to consider this are the real big ballers. We're talking the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Clippers, and now the Miami Heat is getting real spendy. The second apron is set at $182 million. This makes it so you can't include cash in trades. If you've ever heard someone use the term cash considerations, that's what they're talking about. Basically, you're rich and you're using cash to sweeten the deal. The second apron also makes trade exceptions almost impossible to use. If you don't know what a trade exception is, go watch my old video. And if you remain above this second apron for 3 out of 5 consecutive years, your first round pick becomes the 30th pick in the draft no matter what. You get moved to last. Basically, the league is increasing limitations on rich teams from spending tons of money and acquiring free agents. My personal opinion is that this is good. I know all these rules are very confusing, but they are all necessary in keeping a league competitive. I think the NBA saw what Manchester City did to the EPL and didn't want it to become that. That's have an oligarch come in, buy a team, and thus buy championships. But they also didn't want to hard cap an owner that's really passionate about his team and wanted to spend. I think this is going to result in us seeing fewer max contracts on the same team, because those giant contracts are going to handcuff teams when it comes to signing free agents. We're already seeing Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks get huge contracts because they're willing to go to a team that needs help and has money to spend. I think the Warriors were a team that kept getting richer because they were able to re-sign their players with their bird rights while still signing free agents. Now, to avoid luxury tax in that second apron, they traded away Jordan Poole in exchange for Chris Paul's shorter non-guaranteed contract. Look at the Clippers. They basically have to keep what they have now. All they can really do this offseason is re-sign Russ and Mason Plumlee. This should make the league more competitive as a whole. I'm sorry I didn't cover the league's new in-season tournament. That's part of the CBA, but to be honest, I don't really care about it. I could see it totally not happening. It seems kind of weird. They don't even know where the championships game's gonna be, so it's kind of odd, but we'll see. So thank you for being here. Be good to your mothers, eat a corn dog, all that good stuff.